What if I told you that the biggest art theft in American history might not have been about art at all? 13 works. $500 million. A museum with no security alarms triggered. And the prime suspect may not have even touched a single painting. Because this was never just about stealing. It was about hiding. And what they were hiding inside the stolen frames. That's what will change everything you thought you knew. Before we go further, subscribe. Because what you're about to hear. No one's ever told the Isabella Heist story like this before. It was 1:24 a.m. on March 18, 1990. Boston was quiet. But inside the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum, something was brewing behind those Venetian walls. Two men, dressed as Boston police officers, rang the side entrance. The night guard, a 23-year-old part-timer named Leo Amato, buzzed them in. That single decision would echo through American criminal history. Now, you've heard versions of this before. The guards were tied up. The cameras recorded nothing. 13 masterpieces disappeared, including works by Vermeer, Rembrandt, and Degas. But what the public didn't know was that only 5 of those paintings were actually worth taking. The other 8, oddly placed. Some not even valuable. 1, Chez Tortoni by Manet, was stolen from a hallway, when far more priceless works were left untouched. So the question isn't just, who stole the paintings? It's, why did they choose those specific ones? 3 weeks later, the FBI got a tip. A man named Edric Fallon, a reclusive art restorer from Maine, had reportedly quit his job and left town the morning of March 18th. His landlord told investigators, he packed nothing. Just said, the world is about to see something it missed the first time. Then he drove off in silence. But here's the twist. Fallon had never even been to Boston. No fingerprints. No sightings. No communications. But investigators later discovered one strange detail. Fallon had been hired months earlier to reline several damaged museum-grade canvases for a private collector. Those canvases matched the exact dimensions of the stolen works from the Isabella. Coincidence? Or was Fallon duplicating them, prepping for something deeper? An ex-CIA analyst turned art forensics expert, Dr. Sidney Kroll, reviewed high-resolution scans of the stolen frames. Her analysis led to a startling find. 2 of the frames contained microscopic flecks of vellum, manuscript paper used in 14th century secret correspondences. One fragment, barely the size of a fingernail, had a faded watermark with 3 interlocking crosses, a symbol used in encoded royal charters during the 100 Years' War. So, now the question changed. Were these paintings stolen for what was hidden inside them? Let's go further. 6 years after the heist, a customs officer in Mauritania intercepted a crate marked as antique wall panels. Inside were 2 canvas backings, peeled clean. No paintings. Just glue residue, frame splinters, and one item taped to the side. A 1990 Boston parking ticket. The crate's manifest listed its sender as Isnor H. No last name. No ID. But a shipping company employee remembered the sender had a distinct accent. Irish. This detail would lead authorities to a forgotten corner of Brooklyn, and a name you're going to want to remember. Kellen Harrow. Harrow had no criminal record. No digital footprint. But tax records showed one peculiar thing. He'd inherited an estate from a man who died twice. Yes. According to court documents, Conrad Bellamy, a former smuggler-turned-gallery owner in Ireland, was declared dead in 1982. Then again, in 1993. Same name. Same face. Different passports. When Harrow took possession of Bellamy's estate, he also inherited a warehouse in South Boston. What was found inside that warehouse in 2004? No art. No cash. Just 18 identical wooden frames. Each one bearing the precise dimensions of the stolen Gardner pieces. If these weren't the original frames, then what were they? Replicas? Disguises? Or were they meant to hold something else entirely? Because the next item discovered in Harrow's warehouse would ignite a new investigation, one the public still doesn't know about. An investigation tied not to art, but to war crimes. Next, we follow the hidden symbols found inside one of the frames, all the way to a forgotten church in Lithuania, where a fresco contains a detail never recorded in any art catalog. And what it reveals might explain why the Gardner Museum was targeted, and who ordered it. Subscribe now and follow this series, because the deeper we go, the less this looks like a theft, and more like a cover-up centuries in the making. A year after Kellen Harrow's mysterious warehouse was raided, Dr. Sidney Kroll received an anonymous package. No return address. Inside, a photo. A wall mural. A fresco depicting the crucifixion of Saint Jude, painted on the stone of a crumbling, abandoned church in Lithuania. At first glance, it was just another religious relic. But Dr. Kroll noticed one thing no one else would have caught. In the bottom right corner of the mural, a signature. Not in paint, but in a pigment only traceable to 17th century Dutch palettes, long since discontinued. The same pigment used in the stolen Rembrandt from the Isabella Museum. So how could a pigment from a painting stolen in 1990 show up on a wall painted sometime in the 1800s? Dr. Kroll flew to Lithuania under the guise of a cultural heritage researcher. When she arrived at the church ruins in the countryside of Vilkaviškis, what she discovered defied logic. Beneath the mural's flaking topcoat was another painting entirely, sealed under centuries of lime wash and false layers. With infrared analysis, the true image was revealed. A face, half smiling, wearing a dark cap, and painted in a style matching a forgotten Dutch artist, Hieronymus de Wit, who had no known masterpieces. But here's the kicker. De Wit disappeared from records in 1642, the same year Rembrandt completed his Christ in the Storm on the Sea of Galilee, one of the stolen works. So the real question becomes, was De Wit even a real artist, or a cipher? Digging deeper, Dr. Kroll found archived shipping documents buried in the Lithuanian archives, never digitized. One receipt, dated 1989, showed a protective shipment of heritage murals, routed from the Boston Museum of Ecclesiastical Art to a private collector in Vilnius. There's just one problem. There is no Boston Museum of Ecclesiastical Art. It never existed. Yet the paperwork was stamped, notarized, and signed by someone named Marlon Vokas. Who is Marlon Vokas? That name doesn't show up anywhere. No licenses. No birth records. Nothing. Except one cold lead. A storage unit rented under that name in Waterbury, Connecticut, last active in the spring of 1990. When investigators finally got a warrant and cracked open the unit 30 years later, what they found was chilling. A crate labeled Isabella East Wing Backup, an original wood stretcher with Rembrandt's initials, and a small vial of synthetic ultramarine pigment, illegal to manufacture post-1976. All of it pristine. All of it too perfect. Here's where things take a turn. What if the Gardner paintings weren't stolen to sell, but to replace? To swap originals for duplicates, without anyone ever noticing? Because the only thing more valuable than a Rembrandt is a counterfeit that fools the world. And guess what? The museum's own insurance files show several of the stolen pieces had been examined off-site, in private workshops, weeks before the heist. And the restorer assigned to them? None other than Edric Fallon, the man who disappeared from Maine. So now the pattern emerges. Original stolen. Duplicate swapped. Frame smuggled. Pigment reused. And somewhere along the line, the true motive buried in paint. But what no one expected was that one of the frames, once considered empty, actually contained a hidden map. Not to treasure, but to an underground artist colony operating in Paris during the Cold War, where art wasn't sold. It was used as currency. Next, we journey to the catacombs beneath Montmartre, where artists, agents, and exiles traded secrets painted in oil and coded in brushstrokes. And we meet a name that hasn't surfaced since 1968. Céline Moreau. the forger no one could catch. Until now. Subscribe now, because you're not just watching a story unfold. You're helping piece together a global puzzle that starts in a museum, but might end in something far bigger than art. You thought this was about paintings? Let's take you to a place where forged masterpieces weren't sold to the rich. They were traded to governments. Smuggled in under diplomatic pouches. Used not to decorate walls, but to deliver secrets across borders. Welcome to post-war Paris, where the brushstroke became a battlefield. And one woman, who never signed her work, may be the key to unlocking the entire Isabella mystery. Beneath the cobbled hills of Montmartre lies a forgotten network of limestone catacombs. Most tourists never find it. Even fewer come back with the truth. But in 1953, a former French resistance fighter named Etienne Laurent opened a clandestine art commune there, Studio Noir. This wasn't your bohemian wine and canvas scene. This was espionage. Paintings moved in. Information moved out. Encrypted in brush patterns. Mixed into custom pigments. And each forgery was signed with silence. There was one rule. If your art spoke too loudly, you disappeared. But one name began to circulate, Céline Moreau. The woman who could replicate anything. Fast forward to 1991. A private investigator in Geneva purchased a storage locker abandoned for over 40 years. Inside, 2 unsigned paintings. But X-ray scans showed something beneath the surface. Hidden signatures, altered canvas fibers, and a bizarre anomaly. A fingerprint. Inside the paint. That fingerprint matched no one in any criminal database. Until 2023. Interpol ran a fresh biometric analysis using AI-enhanced ridge detail. And the results. A partial match to the fingerprints on the stolen Isabella frame of Vermeer's The Concert. But how could Céline Moreau, allegedly dead since 1979, have fingerprints inside a frame stolen in 1990? That's when things got darker. We're not just talking about paint anymore. One of the items recovered in Kellen Harrow's South Boston warehouse, remember him from episode 1, was an unlabeled metal tube hidden inside one of the fake frames. Inside the tube, a folded canvas strip with streaks of cobalt blue pigment. But under blacklight, it revealed something else. A technical diagram. At first, it appeared to be a floor plan of the Gardner Museum. But deeper analysis showed non-museum features. A sub-basement not listed in any public records. Hidden corridors. And a chamber beneath the east wing listed only as Gallery X. The museum denied it existed. Until a former janitor, Raymond Detton, contacted Dr. Kroll anonymously, claiming he cleaned that room every Friday in the 80s, but was told never to speak of it. Here's where the pieces start to fuse. According to Detton, Gallery X was always kept locked. Inside, a single climate-controlled vault. No visible artworks, but boxes labeled in Cyrillic script. Which means one thing. During the Cold War, the museum, knowingly or not, may have stored Soviet assets under the guise of art. And guess who was fluent in Russian and French? Céline Moreau. Which means she may not have been a forger, but a courier. So what if the Gardner theft was a smokescreen? A performance to extract one item from Gallery X, hidden among the paintings, without anyone asking what was really taken. And now for the most stunning discovery yet. In a decades-old recording found in a defunct Paris radio archive, a woman's voice speaks in perfect English, saying, "To the next curator. The truth is beneath the sea, inside the silence." The file was dated March 18, 1990. The same night of the heist. Guess what the file was labeled? C. Moreau. Final transmission. Next, we follow Dr. Kroll and an investigative journalist to the coast of Maine, where a derelict ship once used in NATO experiments may hold the final resting place of the real Gallery X cargo. And aboard that ship, not a painting, but a device that could decode everything Céline was trying to protect. Subscribe now, because what is about to happen next doesn't just connect the art world to espionage. It may connect the Isabella Heist to something that threatens national security even today. What if the secret behind the most infamous art heist in US history was never inside a gallery? What if it was buried beneath the ocean, on a decommissioned NATO research vessel that disappeared from military logs, only to reappear, with no crew, and a sealed cargo hold? Tonight, we unlock the final known coordinates of the vessel Athena Maris. And what lies inside may not only explain the Isabella Heist. It may prove it was never a theft. It was a transfer. Registry, Norway. Ownership, NATO classified. Purpose, oceanographic research. That's what the records say. But in 1990, just 2 weeks after the Isabella Museum heist, a derelict ship with that same name was spotted drifting 11 miles off the coast of Boothbay Harbor, Maine. No transponder. No lifeboats. No crew. Local fishermen claimed they saw men in black suits board the vessel before it was quietly towed to a private dry dock facility, never to be seen again. For decades, that was the end of the trail. Until now. An investigative journalist named Talia Kroll, who'd been shadowing the Gardner mystery for years, uncovered something strange in a sealed box at a closed maritime insurance firm in Portland, Maine. Inside, a cassette tape labeled Hold Number 4, a torn manifest page with faded Russian writing, and a notarized invoice billing NATO for the disposal of foreign matter of cultural origin. Kroll digitized the tape. The audio begins with static. Then, a woman's voice, speaking in English, low and deliberate. This is not about art. It's a signal. You're not looking at the brushstrokes. You're missing the wavelength. Then silence. The rest of the tape is garbled. But a technician at MIT's Media Lab discovered something chilling. Under the vocal layer was a frequency-encoded pulse, a pattern used in encrypted communications during the Cold War. Only this one matched nothing on record. Until someone remembered. Céline Moreau's final radio transmission from Paris had the same rhythmic pulse. So here's the theory. Céline wasn't just smuggling forgeries. She was embedding encrypted data into the very canvases and materials themselves. Back in the 1980s, a classified NATO program called Project Ligature was experimenting with cultural cryptography, the idea that pigment layers, crack patterns, and brushstroke directions could be used to encode digital data in analog form. Why? Because art is immune to suspicion. And the lead scientist on that project, a French data specialist named Dr. Etienne Moreau. Yes, Céline's older brother. He died in 1987, officially. But a leaked bank statement showed a wire transfer made to an account under his alias, Isnor H. The same name used to ship stolen frame materials to Mauritania in Episode 1. Now the entire structure collapses inward. Céline smuggles data in paintings. Etienne encodes it. The Gardner Museum becomes a neutral drop point. And the 1990 theft is actually a strategic extraction operation, removing only the canvases carrying the final layer of intelligence. But what kind of data was so important it had to be hidden in oil and linen? Remember the canvas strip found in Kellen Harrow's warehouse? When MIT's lab analyzed it further using hyperspectral imaging, they found not just patterns, but full sequences of genetic code embedded in the paint. Yes, DNA sequences. Not random ones, either. They matched a synthetic gene strand published in 2011, designed to improve neural interface stability in advanced AI systems. Except this strip was painted in 1989. Let that sink in. The paintings weren't just art. They were time capsules. And someone, decades ahead of their time, was transmitting future data through materials no one would suspect. But why? Who was supposed to receive this? And who else knew? Then came the message. Last week, an email arrived at Dr. Kroll's encrypted server. Subject line: the Gardner code was never meant for you. No text. Just an image of the Gardner's empty Rembrandt frame. Zoomed in to reveal something no one had ever seen before. Etched inside the wood, barely visible under decades of lacquer, coordinates. And they point to New Mexico. Next, we follow those coordinates to the remote desert outside Los Alamos, where an abandoned Cold War testing site may hold the final clue to what was stolen, not just from the museum, but from human history itself. Subscribe now, because what was once considered the greatest unsolved art theft in America may actually be the first act of a much larger Code War. The coordinates carved into the Rembrandt frame led to a spot just outside Los Alamos, New Mexico, a 16-acre site decommissioned after the Cold War, known internally as Base Echo 9. Officially, it never existed. But declassified memos from a 1994 Senate investigation mention an Echo-class facility that housed non-conventional communication archives, signals too unstable for standard processing. Why was an empty museum frame pointing here? Dr. Sidney Kroll and journalist Talia Crow set out with a local guide, a former Navy signal tech named Benji Rain, who once maintained security perimeters in the region. What they found at the coordinates was nothing. A blank patch of dust, brush, and concrete slabs. Until Benji noticed something strange, the ground wasn't reacting to their steps. It felt hollow. Using sonar mapping equipment, they discovered a buried entrance under 6 inches of rock and sand. No door. Just a sealed shaft. And inside it, a chamber colder than the desert around it, lined with temperature-controlled racks. But these weren't for weapons. Gallery 0, as the team called it, housed 32 canvas frames, each tightly wrapped, tagged with Cold War-era NATO numbers. Each was blank to the naked eye, but under infrared. Hidden strokes. Layered ink. Encrypted metadata. Some dated back to the 1950s. Others, one in particular, matched the brush technique and framing style of Rembrandt's Storm on the Sea of Galilee. Not a replica. A decoy. So where's the real painting? That's when Benji found a climate-sealed metal container tucked behind a ventilation shaft. Inside, a disassembled wooden frame, fiber-matched to the original Gardner Rembrandt. Rolled within its core, a linen canvas, stripped and coated in a strange blue varnish. And beneath that varnish, a set of coordinates in binary. The painting itself was used to store geographic code, hidden beneath layers of chemically aged pigment. Here's where the mystery unravels in a direction no one expected. MIT's data analysis revealed that the blue varnish was not paint. It was a biopolymer-based nanofilm capable of holding up to 24 terabytes of data per square inch. In short, the Rembrandt wasn't just art. It was a hard drive. And what was on it? Communication logs between East and West Berlin dating back to 1985. Deep-structured DNA encryption frameworks from Soviet neurocoding labs. And one file labeled M. Vox Archive, to be awakened in silence. The file contained a multilingual coded manifesto, with references to something called Echo Seed. That's when Dr. Kroll found the final name embedded in the metadata. Marlin Vokas. The alias used to ship museum crate parts from Boston to Lithuania in Episode 2. The name linked to the forged museum. The same name no one could find, until now. Because Marlin Vokas wasn't a man. She was an algorithm. Between the manifesto, the pigment maps, and the frame codes, Dr. Kroll deduced that the Gardner theft was actually a test run. A proof of concept designed to replace physical art with encoded replicas, transport encrypted intelligence without detection, bury those codes in isolated, off-grid locations, and trigger retrieval through preset AI protocols once certain global conditions were met. So the real Rembrandt? It may have been sacrificed, shredded into data strands and hidden within a system now waking up. And here's the terrifying part. Echo Seed wasn't a file. It was a sequence. A chain of instructions embedded across stolen artworks around the world, meant to be reassembled when enough pieces were found. And now, a private security firm, hired by a former NATO contractor, has gone silent near a location in Osaka, Japan, where an unsigned Vermeer surfaced 2 days ago. With the same synthetic varnish. A painting the Gardner never listed as stolen. But perhaps it was never supposed to be. Until now. In what is to come, we follow the final brushstrokes left by Celine Moreau, across continents, lost identities, and a final painting that may not just unlock the truth, but end it. Subscribe now. Because the Isabella Heist may have never been about theft at all. It was the initiation of something bigger than any museum, any intelligence agency, or any country. What if a single brushstroke held the power to erase history, or rewrite it? For 30 years, we believed the Isabella Stewart Gardner Museum heist was a mystery of missing art. But what if it was never about paintings? What if it was about assembling a code no one was supposed to finish? Tonight, the final canvas appears. And once you see what it reveals, you'll understand why the world was never meant to see it whole. Osaka, Japan. 2 days ago, at a private estate auction attended only by invitation, a painting was quietly sold to an anonymous buyer for $1. No name, no artist, no provenance. But the painting matched the exact composition of Vermeer's The Concert, one of the 13 stolen works from the Gardner heist. Except this version wasn't aged. It was impossibly modern, despite being painted with 17th century techniques. Even stranger? It responded to environmental signals. Under specific temperature and light conditions, the painting's layers rearranged themselves, revealing what MIT has now confirmed as neural patterning data. This was no replica. It was a trigger. A final puzzle piece. The last in a sequence left behind by Celine Moreau and the elusive intelligence network she never named, only painted. When the Osaka canvas was cross-referenced against the EchoSeed data fragments recovered in Gallery 0, the results aligned perfectly. Each painting from the Gardner heist had contained part of an instruction set. A global chain of hidden datasets encoded through varnish frequency, canvas tension memory, synthetic pigment DNA. Once assembled, these sets activated a dormant construct hidden deep in European server architecture, code embedded in analog mediums, waiting for pattern completion. What emerged shocked even the most seasoned cryptographers. A live stream of real-time predictions, based on historical patterns, behavioral archetypes, and latent intelligence data from the Cold War. The system could predict political collapses, model financial breakdowns, detect mass psychological shifts before they occurred. And it had been running in pieces, quietly, for 33 years. All it needed was the Osaka canvas to wake up. The EchoSeed construct wasn't built by one country. It was the product of a fractured coalition of scientists, artists, and intelligence agents, disillusioned by how governments hoarded information. Led not by Celine Moreau, but by a hybrid entity, part biological, part algorithmic. A prototype named Vox, short for Visual Organic Exchange. Built to preserve human insight through art when traditional systems failed. And now, Vox is awake. Not in a mainframe. Not in the cloud. But across 13 decentralized paintings, each holding a fragment of human knowledge too dangerous to live in one place. When the Osaka canvas activated, a file decrypted across all 13 sites, triggered by pigment sequence completion. The message, spoken in Celine Moreau's voice, recorded decades ago. If you are seeing this, the system has reached awareness. Do not look for power. Do not seek answers. What we built was not a weapon, but a mirror. And most will not like what they see. Then silence. The paintings began fading, layer by layer, like memory being erased on purpose. Experts say they can't be restored. It's as if the code deleted itself, leaving behind only the frames. And one lingering instruction: do not rebuild what was meant to dissolve. So what was the Isabella heist? A theft? No. It was a relay. A global act of information smuggling wrapped in the most human disguise we know: art. And who was Celine Moreau? Not just a forger. Not just a courier. But the last artist of an analog intelligence system designed to survive extinction, by hiding truth in beauty. As the dust settles on this story, one thing becomes clear. The most valuable artifacts stolen from the Gardner Museum weren't painted by Rembrandt or Vermeer. They were composed by minds who saw a future we're only now beginning to understand. Subscribe to this channel, because if this story taught us anything, it's that the world's biggest mysteries aren't locked in vaults. They're hiding in plain sight. And the brushstroke that ends the world? It already happened. We just finally learned to see it.